Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. This episode is sponsored by Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. We are here today with Christine Göös. She is the head of content at Smartly. Christine, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Very excited for our topic today.
Yes, I am really excited to chat about it too. We're going to be talking, obviously, with the Me Too movement that happened recently. We're going to be talking about creating inclusive work environments. And as we were talking about kind of the key takeaways that we wanted to cover offline, Christine, I think this is going to be enormously valuable for a lot of folks listening. But before we get into that, I just want to give a little bit of context around who you are and what Smartly does. So Christine, could you tell us a little bit about Smartly and what your role is there on the team?
Yeah, sure. So Smartly is a advertising automation platform. We currently automate both creative and ad buying for Facebook and Instagram advertising. And I am the head of content there. So it means I take care of everything related to content in marketing, branding. I also work with quite a few of our brands on the messaging and copy side for their campaigns. So quite a varied role there.
Love it. I love it. And Christine, we have had you on the show before. You always deliver fantastic content. So I'm excited to dive into this. We've got a lot that we're going to cover today. And to start, you've actually got some statistics that tie diversity, specifically diversity amongst the higher ranks of leadership, directly to increased business results, which I think is super interesting. Could you share some of those stats with us?
Yeah, of course. And just to give a bit of a background, we're in the B2B space. A lot of the companies listening to this podcast are innovators in their space. They're trying to disrupt their respective industries. And we all know that innovation happens when you have diverse minds coming together to create something new. So diversity and gender equality, why you should care about it is not just for creating inclusive work environments where your employees feel safe and they can thrive and they can deliver their best results, but it's actually something that will impact your bottom line. So actually, there is a statistic that tech firms that are led by women tend to bring in 12% more revenue. And additionally, every 10% increase in diversity in the executive team tends to hike up your earnings by almost 1%. So,
Wow.
so there's a direct correlation between how diverse your company is and how well you're performing. So I think, all of the companies, ultimately, they care about those numbers. So if you don't care about anything else, care about that. I think that alone should be incentive enough for companies to start making those changes in this realm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, now that we've got kind of the numbers to back it up, Christine, I'd love to kind of shift the conversation into some practical things that leaders can do to improve the office, to create a more inclusive environment. And you've got a few suggestions for where folks can get started with this. Can you share those with us?
Yeah, sure. I think first it's important to recognize that, especially when you start new businesses, you tend to start them with people right? And we know that especially the tech world is very male dominated, which means that, startup founders, they tend to know other men who can help them out. They tend to hire them, consult them. And it's important to recognize that your circle of experts and people who can really deliver may not be that diverse. So it's firstly a pipeline problem. You need to actively seek out more diversity in when you're hiring, when you're bringing in new people. And don't get me wrong, I believe that, companies should always hire the best person for the role, regardless of their race or their gender. But you need more representation, a better pool to choose from, because when you have more diverse candidates in the pipeline, you are more likely also to hire them because you'll find that great talent. So that's the first part. You need to actively have your talent resources, your recruiters reach out to people from different backgrounds. So fixing the pipeline is the first part. Then secondly, you have to look into your day-to-day operations. How do you actually, who's involved in the decision-making process? Do you bring in people who may not be in your inner circle, who might have like really great inputs to give to your business? How do you promote internally? Do you promote the people who you know the best, who are the closest to you, or do you actually seek out to know your employees and know those diverse candidates and also promote and champion them? Then if you think about talent marketing, I think it's very important, when you're building your employer branding, when you're showing off your culture, do you highlight people from different backgrounds? And especially, in the recent conversations, I think the whole discourse has skewed too much towards just, like, are we talking about women? Are we hiring women? Are we showing women in our companies? But actually, to truly be a diversity champion, you need to look beyond that. Are you hiring, promoting, and showing people of color? Are you hiring people with disabilities? It's a much wider conversation than just, men versus women, but representation is really important. People need to see people like them to feel included and to feel like this might be a welcoming workplace for me to apply to and work in.
That makes a lot of sense. I think the more we're paying attention to that stuff, Christine, obviously the better experience is going to create for everybody. Are there any other kind of I love kind of how practical you're getting here with things that we can focus on. Anything else that would be helpful for leaders to just ideas to get leaders thinking about the specific things they can do?
Absolutely. And I'm very passionate about this subject in particular because, I come from Scandinavia where we have pretty robust family leave and maternity leave. And I think that US is actually, in that realm, a developing country in the sense that, we don't have those regulations and we have very few companies that actually focus on this. So I think it's extremely important to fix that part, and that's also, in the tech space, in the B2B space, the competition for the best hires is actually very high. And this is how you can compete and win and hire those best people for the job, is also by offering, competitive family leave, competitive maternity leave. Because, when women are no longer asked, do you choose your career or do you, choose having children? How are you going to balance it all? Men are never asked this question. So by changing those policies, you can further encourage an environment where, you will have women and also men, because this is not just for women. What kind of family leave do you offer men so they can also help out? It's, tackling both sides of the spectrum.
Today's growth story is about how a big data platform increased the efficiency of their lead gen campaigns in a matter of weeks. Delphix, the company in the story, had hired an agency to manage their Google ads a few years ago, but they weren't seeing the results they wanted to see. Being such a technical B2B solution, they set out to find a team that could take on their challenge. After countless proposals, they found the perfect fit: Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. In just 1 week after launching Directive's campaigns, Delphix saw their lead volume double and their cost per lead drop by 60%. I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too, so head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
So I want to spend a little bit of time, Christine, talking about the darker side of this stuff, which is harassment and practical ways that companies can go about handling that. As we were talking offline, and you had some thoughts around that idea, and I think it'd be really helpful to share.
Yeah, so I think that, in the wake of the recent Me Too movements that have taken many industries by storm, not just, entertainment and the movie industry, but also, I've seen a big storm happen in advertising as well, where, we're now waking up to the reality that in many industries, and I think tech is one of those, sexual harassment has been almost normalized behavior for many, many decades. And the way you can actually start to combat this is, outside of formal sexual harassment trainings and written down policies, you have to crack down on the everyday behavior of your employees. So what I mean by that is that, of course, you have to tackle those grave cases, where, maybe physical assault or ongoing harassment happens, and you have to really make sure that, as a leader, you're not complicit by remaining silent or trying to silence the victims by making them sign NDAs against the settlements. You really need to make sure that you publicly come out and say, hey, this is not okay. But then on a day-to-day level, some of the behaviors are so internalized that we do not always realize that it's even contributing to this whole culture of harassment. For example, jokes or remarks that may seem little and not that impactful actually are part of the problem. And this is not just for men. As I've become more aware of how we can impact and create more positive cultures, I've actually had to come back and also, internalize and think, okay, wait, so, I'm thinking of this joke. Is it actually going to contribute to the culture if I say something aloud? They can be small daily things. And, it's not often that, men or women who say a sexist joke in the work environment, they may not mean anything harmful by that, but calling that out and just having a constructive conversation and saying, hey, I don't think that joke is appropriate because I think it contributes to the culture of sexual harassment. Or look, I would rather not hear these types of remarks in the office. Just having that conversation also helps a lot. I've had really constructive and great conversations with my colleagues on these kinds of issues, and many have come out and said, look, I never thought about it this way because it's kind of always been a certain way, but thank you so much for bringing this out. We need open conversation to be able to change these things.
Yeah, you're spot on there. And I think nipping that stuff in the bud as soon as you hear about it as a leader in the organization has to happen. It can't be something that you turn a blind eye to, or that you see and say, oh, I'll say something if it happens again. I think calling it out in the moment, as soon as you possibly can, pulling that person aside that said it. Or I think there are a ton of different ways you can handle it. Obviously, you've got to figure out the context of your situation, but you're spot on there, Christine. Is there anything else around creating inclusive work environments that you think we should talk about before I let you go today?
Sure. I think maybe the one last point on this whole movement and this huge shift that is happening in all industries is that, quite often the conversation becomes polarized. We're talking about a war on men, or it's men against women. That's really not the case. So if we look past that, it's not about, some people are saying, oh, I'm afraid to take a meeting alone with a woman right now because I don't want to come off as a harasser, or how can I, I'm afraid to say anything in the office. No, like, if we all also need to use common sense, is that something you would say to your sister, or is that something you would say to your mother? We are looking to move to a phase in this where everybody feels more comfortable in the work environment. But in order to do so, we might have to feel a little bit uncomfortable first, because it is such a big shift in the industry.
Yeah. Totally. All right, Christine. Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing this with us. If there's somebody that wants to stay connected with you, or they want to connect with Smartly, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Yeah, so you'll find Smartly at smartly.io. We're also on all the main social media channels. I myself am pretty active on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me, it's just Christine Göös. You'll find me there.
Wonderful. Awesome, Christine. Well, again, this was incredible, and I really appreciate your time today. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.